What if I told you that all that effort you're putting into your jigging, all those hard rips and aggressive snaps, is the exact reason you're not getting bit? It sounds crazy, right? We're always told to trigger that reaction strike. But today, we're going to expose a hard truth about winter fishing. We're diving deep into why your jigging motion is probably way too aggressive for lethargic winter fish. By the end of this video, you'll understand the simple, almost lazy adjustment that can turn a dead day on the ice into one you'll never forget. I'm going to reveal the psychological reason a slow-moving fish sees your lure as a threat, not a meal. So, let me know in the comments right now. Are you a fast, aggressive jigger, or do you prefer a slow, subtle approach in the winter? Let's see where everyone stands before we blow this topic wide open. For generations, we've been handed down the same advice. You gotta make 'em react. Snap that jig hard to get their attention. And in the summer, when fish are fired up with a fast metabolism, that's not bad advice. A fast-moving bait can look like fleeing prey, and an aggressive bass or walleye will smash it without a second thought. This idea gets baked into our muscle memory. So when winter rolls around and the water temperature plummets, we take that same energetic approach out on the ice or into the cold open water. We pound the bottom, we rip our spoons, we dance our jigs like they're at a rock concert. We do it because it's what we've always done, but we fail to realize we're not fishing for the same fish. The cold changes everything, and it's time we changed our approach along with it. First, let's talk about the cold, hard truth of a winter fish. Their bodies are completely different than they are in the summer. As the water temperature drops, so does their metabolism. This isn't just a small change, it's a fundamental shift in their biology. They are cold-blooded creatures, so their internal body temperature matches the freezing water around them. This means digestion slows to a crawl, their movements become sluggish and deliberate, and every single action they take is carefully calculated. They are no longer the voracious predators of summer. Instead, they are lethargic energy misers, trying to survive until the spring thaw. Picture a bear in hibernation, but underwater. That's the mindset of the fish you're targeting. Forgetting this simple biological fact is the root cause of almost every failed winter fishing trip. You are not trying to entice an active athlete, you are trying to tempt a creature that is doing its best to move as little as possible. Because their metabolism has slowed down, energy is everything. A winter fish lives by a simple code: conserve energy at all costs. They will not waste precious fuel chasing down a meal that looks like it's going to put up a fight or be hard to catch. Think about it from their perspective. In summer, chasing a baitfish for 20 feet is nothing. They can easily regain that energy with one meal. In winter, that same 20-foot chase could be a death sentence. It might burn more calories than the meal itself provides. So, they position themselves in areas where they can ambush prey with minimal effort. They are looking for the easiest possible meal. A bait that is dying, struggling, or completely unaware. When you are ripping your jig up and down 3 feet at a time, you are presenting a meal that looks far too energetic and difficult to catch. The fish does the math in its head and decides, nope, not worth the effort. It's a simple cost-benefit analysis that you are losing every time. This energy conservation mindset leads directly to the next crucial concept, the shrinking strike zone. In warm water, a fish might see your lure from 15 feet away and rocket over to crush it. Their strike zone is huge. In the winter, that zone shrinks dramatically. For a lethargic walleye or perch, the strike zone might be less than a foot. Sometimes it's only a few inches. The fish is not willing to move far, so you have to bring the meal directly to them and keep it there. Imagine a fish suspended just off the bottom, barely moving its fins. It's just waiting. If your lure zips past its nose outside of that tiny imaginary box, it won't even bother turning its head. This is why holding your bait still is so incredibly important. You have to park that easy meal right in their kitchen, right in that tiny strike zone, and give them a long, hard look at it. An aggressive, fast-moving jig is never in that zone long enough to even be considered a meal. Now let's get into the psychology of it all. The mindset of a winter fish shifts from a confident predator to a cautious survivor. Their world is cold and dark, and their senses are slightly dulled. They are far more likely to be spooked by sudden erratic movements. A lure that is violently ripping up and down doesn't register as a wounded bait fish. Instead, it registers as something unnatural, something frantic, and potentially dangerous. It could be a larger predator. It could be something that isn't food at all. Their instinct for self-preservation kicks in, and they will either freeze up completely or slowly back away. You can often see this on your sonar. A mark will appear. Move in to investigate your jig. You'll give it a hard snap to trigger the bite, and the mark will just fade away. You didn't fail to trigger it. You actively scared it off. You confirmed its suspicion that your lure was not a safe or easy meal. So, what are these lethargic fish actually looking to eat? They are targeting prey that requires almost zero effort to catch. Think about the natural food sources in the winter. Small minnows or bait fish that are stunned or dying from the cold. They flutter and fall slowly. They hang suspended in the water column, barely moving. They are easy targets. They also feed on aquatic insects and larvae emerging from the bottom sediment. These things move incredibly slowly, with subtle twitches and undulations. This is what you need to imitate. Your presentation should scream, "I am weak and dying, please eat me." An aggressive snapping motion screams, "I am healthy, strong, and I will be hard to catch." You are trying to mimic the weakest link in the food chain, not the strongest. When you finally align your presentation with what the fish are naturally programmed to eat in the winter, your success rate will skyrocket. Let's clearly define what too aggressive really looks like. We're not talking about subtle wrist flicks. We are talking about the big, dramatic rod movements that many of us, myself included, were taught to use. This includes ripping the lure, which means violently lifting the rod tip 2, 3, or even 4 feet. It includes hard, fast snaps of the wrist that make the lure dart erratically. It also includes constantly pounding the bottom, creating huge clouds of silt and making a loud thumping noise. While these techniques can be useful for calling fish in from a distance, they are absolute poison when a fish is close by and inspecting your lure. It's the equivalent of a salesman screaming in a customer's face when they are quietly trying to read a product label. It's too much, too loud, and it breaks the delicate illusion you are trying to create. It's simply not the right language for a quiet, cold environment. Your sonar or flasher tells this story perfectly if you know how to read it. Here's a scene that plays out thousands of times every winter. You're jigging with a steady 1-foot hop. A red line appears at the bottom and starts to rise towards your green jig mark. The fish is interested. It gets closer and closer, maybe just a foot away. Your heart starts pounding. Your instinct, honed by years of warm water fishing, screams at you. Trigger it. Give it a good snap. So you pop the rod tip hard. The green mark shoots up 3 feet and the red mark immediately turns and disappears back to the bottom. That fish was committed. It was ready to eat. But your sudden aggressive movement was unnatural. It broke the spell. The fish saw it as a red flag, and the opportunity was lost. That wasn't a refusal to bite. It was a retreat from a perceived threat. Learning to do less in that critical moment is the key. Think of your jigging cadence as a language. You are trying to have a conversation with the fish. In the winter, the fish are speaking in quiet whispers. They are looking for subtle cues. An aggressive jigging motion is like shouting in a library. You're not communicating easy meal, you're communicating danger and panic. A dying bait fish doesn't shoot towards the surface at 10 miles an hour. It flutters, it pauses, it slowly drifts down. A small aquatic insect doesn't perform frantic gymnastics. It subtly wiggles and crawls. By being overly aggressive, you are speaking a language the fish doesn't understand, or worse, a language it interprets as a warning. The goal is to learn the quiet language of winter prey. This means slowing down, using smaller movements, and embracing the silence between the movements. The pause is the most important word in your winter vocabulary. This brings us to the myth of the winter reaction strike. The whole theory behind aggressive jigging is to force a reaction from a fish that isn't actively feeding. You try to create a now or never moment where the fish has to strike out of pure predatory instinct before the meal gets away. This is a perfectly valid concept when a fish's metabolism is high, but when a fish is lethargic, its instincts are dulled and its reaction time is slow. It's not primed for that kind of impulsive decision. It's in a state of careful consideration. It will watch your bait for a long time, weighing the energy cost. A sudden fast movement doesn't trigger an attack, it triggers a re-evaluation. And the conclusion of that re-evaluation is almost always too much work, too risky. You are trying to force a decision from a creature that wants to avoid making any decisions at all. It's a fundamental mismatch of strategy. Here is a simple mechanical reason why aggressive jigging fails. You are actively competing with yourself and moving the bait away from the fish. Let's go back to our sonar example. A fish is slowly rising to inspect your lure, which is hovering 1 foot off the bottom. The fish gets within inches, its nose right next to the bait. You get excited and rip the rod tip up 3 feet. In that instant, you have just pulled the meal a full 3 feet away from a creature that doesn't want to move more than 3 inches. You have made the task of eating it significantly harder. Now the fish has to decide if it wants to expend the energy to follow it up. And 99 times out of 100, the answer is no. By trying to seal the deal, you have actually made the deal impossible for the fish to accept. The most effective move in that situation is to do almost nothing, keeping the bait right in the fish's face. Alright, so we've established the problem in detail. We know why aggressive jigging is a losing strategy for lethargic winter fish. We understand their metabolism, their mindset, and how they perceive our lures. Now, let's pivot and talk about the solution. This isn't about getting a whole new set of expensive lures or fancy electronics. This is a simple, fundamental shift in your technique and your mindset. It's about learning the art of subtlety. It's about moving from an aggressive hunter to a patient trapper. The techniques we are about to discuss are designed to perfectly imitate the slow, dying, and irresistible prey that winter fish are programmed to eat. This is where you stop scaring fish and start putting them on the ice. It begins with embracing the most powerful tool in your arsenal, the pause. The single most effective and overlooked part of any winter jigging cadence is the pause. It's the moment you do absolutely nothing. After you lift your lure or shake it, you must let it come to a complete rest and hold it there. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 seconds. I'm talking 5, 10, even 30 seconds of being perfectly still. This accomplishes 2 critical things. First, it gives a hesitant fish time to approach and inspect the lure without feeling threatened. Second, and more importantly, this is when most of your bites will actually happen. A lethargic fish will watch the lure flutter and fall, and as it hangs there perfectly still and vulnerable, it will slowly move in and simply inhale it. The bite will often feel like nothing more than a slight tick in the line, or the line will suddenly feel mushy and light as the fish swims upwards after taking it. If you are constantly moving your lure, you will never even detect these subtle bites. Now, let's talk about the movements themselves. Instead of big, sweeping rips, we need to scale everything down to micro movements. The first technique is the quiver or the shake. After your lure has settled and you've paused, instead of lifting it again, just gently quiver your rod tip. You're not trying to make the lure jump, you're just trying to make it vibrate in place. Imagine a small insect or a minnow that is shivering from the cold. All you need to do is tense your hand and wrist to send tiny vibrations down the line. On your sonar, the lure should look like it's just getting slightly thicker or fuzzier, not moving up and down. This subtle sign of life, combined with the vulnerability of a stationary object, can be absolutely deadly. It suggests life without suggesting a difficult chase. It's the perfect trigger for a fish that is already up close and personal with your bait. The next key movement is the slow lift and fall. When you do decide to move the lure vertically, avoid the snap. Instead, perform a slow, deliberate lift of the rod tip over a period of 2 or 3 seconds. Raise it about 6 inches to a foot. Then, instead of letting it free fall on a slack line, you want to control its descent. Follow the lure down with your rod tip, keeping just enough tension to feel the weight of the lure, but not enough to impede its natural flutter. This controlled fall perfectly mimics a dying bait fish that is struggling to stay alive. It's a natural, non-threatening movement. An aggressive rip and a free fall on a slack line looks panicked and unnatural. The slow, controlled lift and fall is a much more convincing presentation. It keeps the bait looking like an easy, wounded target throughout the entire sequence. What about pounding the bottom? It's a classic technique, but most people do it the wrong way in winter. They slam a heavy spoon or jig into the mud over and over, trying to make a huge commotion. This can work to attract fish from afar, but it will spook anything nearby. The subtle, correct way to use the bottom is for silt puffs. Let your lure hit the bottom gently. Then, just barely lift it an inch or two and let it fall back down. You are not trying to make a thump. You are trying to create a tiny, enticing puff of sand or silt. This imitates invertebrates digging or a small creature disturbing the bottom. It's a visual cue that there might be food available. You do this a couple of times, then lift your lure a foot off the bottom and hold it perfectly still. Fish that are drawn in by the subtle puffs will see your lure hanging there, a perfect silhouette of an easy meal. Your electronics are your eyes underwater, and you need to use them to read the fish's mood and adjust your cadence in real time. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Pay close attention to how the fish react to your movements. If you see a mark appear on the screen, don't immediately change what you're doing. Continue with your slow, subtle cadence. If the fish starts to rise and show interest, the absolute best thing you can do is often to just stop and hold the lure perfectly still. Dead stick it. If the fish comes in but won't commit, try giving it a few of those subtle quivers. If it starts to fade away, a single, slow lift of about 6 inches might bring it back. The key is to let the fish tell you what it wants. Don't force your preconceived cadence on them. Be reactive, be patient, and be subtle. Your electronics are giving you live feedback. Use it. Let's paint a picture of a real-life scenario. You're set up on a classic winter walleye spot. It's cold, it's quiet. You've been doing a slow lift and fall cadence with long pauses for about 10 minutes. Suddenly, a thick red line materializes on your flasher, halfway up the water column, and begins to slowly sink towards your jig. This is a suspended neutral walleye. Your old instinct is to rip the jig to get its attention, but the new you knows better. You hold the jig perfectly still as the mark gets closer. It hovers just above your lure for what feels like an eternity, maybe 20 full seconds. You fight every urge to move it. Then, you impart just a tiny, almost imperceptible quiver to your rod tip. The red line merges with your jig's green line on the screen. You slowly reel down, feel a spongy weight, and set the hook. That is the new way. Patience, subtlety, and a perfectly timed micro-movement. The underwater camera never lies, and it gives us the final verdict on this entire debate. When you watch footage of an aggressive jigging presentation, you see exactly what we've been talking about. The lure darts and shoots around so erratically that fish will often physically shy away from it. They'll turn their bodies to avoid the lure as it rips past them. They look startled and confused. But when you watch footage of a subtle presentation, the story is completely different. The lure hangs there, and the fish approach it slowly, cautiously. They'll stare at it from inches away. They'll follow it as it's slowly lifted. They'll hover over it as it sits on the bottom. The entire interaction is calm and deliberate. It looks like a genuine inspection of a potential food source, not a reaction to a threat. The camera confirms it. Subtle presentations invite fish in, while aggressive ones push them away. Now, is there ever a time when aggression works in the winter? Yes, but it's a very specific and limited application. A few hard rips or pounding the bottom can be an effective tool for calling fish in from a distance. The flash and vibration can pique the curiosity of a fish that is 30 or 40 feet away and draw them in to investigate the commotion. However, this is where the strategy must change instantly. The moment you see a fish appear on your sonar, the aggression must stop completely. You've used the loud noise to get them to the party, but now you need to switch to quiet whispers to get them to stay. Once they are in your cone, you immediately revert to the subtle quivers, slow lifts, and most importantly, the long dead stick pauses. Think of it as ringing the dinner bell, then serving the meal on a silver platter. Let's tie this all together into a new, cohesive mindset. Your job as a winter angler is not to force a bite. Your job is to present an opportunity that is too good and too easy for a lethargic fish to pass up. You need to tease them, not threaten them. Every movement you make should be designed to build confidence in the fish, not to startle it. Slow down your entire process. Make your movements smaller and more deliberate. Most importantly, learn to love the pause. Let the bait do the work by just hanging there, looking vulnerable and still. This shift from an aggressive, high-energy approach to a patient, subtle one, might feel boring or passive at first, but when you start feeling those subtle tick bites on the paws, and you start icing fish on days when everyone else is getting skunked, you'll realize you've cracked the code on lethargic winter fish. So, there you have it. The big secret isn't a secret at all, it's a simple change in perspective. Less is truly more when it comes to winter jigging. The most powerful, game-changing realization is that you're not trying to trigger an unwilling fish into a reaction strike. You are trying to convincingly imitate a weak, dying, or effortless meal for a fish that is desperately trying to conserve energy. That's the aha moment. When you stop thinking like a hunter and start thinking like the prey, your entire approach changes. This single shift in mindset, from aggressive rips to subtle pauses, can and will revolutionize your success on the ice or in cold water. Thank you so much for watching and for being willing to challenge some old school thinking. If this video gave you a new perspective, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more content that gets you thinking. Now, for the real discussion, I want to hear from you. What is the most subtle, almost do-nothing technique that has surprisingly worked for you in tough winter conditions? Share your secrets in the comments below. Let's all learn from each other.